being a professional people pleaser, as I call it, is a real thing. And I think we're so afraid, as you said, to let people down that we let ourselves down. And at some point, you're going to feel empty. At some point, you're not going to have nothing to give to the world. And I have a quote that says, the first step to being unhappy is trying to please everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. And so what I've learned how to do is I've gotten to a point, and it's taking work, and I still have my people pleasing tendencies, but I realize that's mission impossible. I'm like, this is who I am. And I know I'm a kind-hearted person. I know I'm a good-hearted person, but if how I'm living or what I'm doing doesn't please your perception, that's not my problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of people will put their perception on you, and they will want you to be who they want you to be.
Dr. Mindy here.
Your body is in a war zone.
Different parts of the brain get activated depending upon how stressed you are.
When you look at it from that inflammatory.
That's interesting. I mean, that has some merit to it for sure.
And you can't control everything.
I'd say.
And what about a woman who is not pregnant, but she's aiming?
Okay, well, let's just jump in. And first off, I just want to say welcome to my podcast. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love how everything worked out. Like, I feel like all the stars aligned for us to have this conversation.
For sure.
And I have to tell you, like, I had heard about your book. Mm-hmm. My first reaction was, that is a phenomenal title.
Thank you.
My second reaction was, I need to read that book. And then when I saw you in person in Charleston and heard your speech, like, wow, like just inspiration oozes out of you. And I'm sure people have told you that, but can you start with just where did you become such an inspiring human? Because it's like, it feels like it's just like oxygen that you're just breathing inspiration.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I always tell people it pretty much picked out me. I didn't ever set out to like be a speaker or be an author. It was me losing football. I mean, my career was sports, and, you know, a few years in the NFL and losing that and kind of losing my identity, losing myself and hitting a rock bottom to like, man, what do I want to do with my life? And so that was a big area that I felt pushed me into what I do today, even though it wasn't the only thing. Me having, the birth of my son, Tristan, and then one of my best friends committing suicide. So Tristan really got me on the mindset of like, man, I now have a human that's going to follow my path. So I need to get some things right in my life. And then when my best friend committed suicide, it was a thing of like, man, I had so much guilt. I was out somewhere in Dallas. I'll never forget July 4th weekend. I got that call, and immediately I was like, man, like I didn't even realize he was going through this. And I was like, man, what if he had a voice to hear? And a lot of guilt, but I had to let go of that. And I made a promise to him that I would literally walk into my biggest fear. I'm an introvert by nature, but it was a calling on my life to say, you know what? I want to help people with their self-worth, help people know that just because something is over, because he lost sports, he lost a relationship, so he felt like his life was over, that your life isn't over. And that's where it started. You know, back in like 2009 is when I started recording content, but 2011 is when it became real for me.
So, you know, what's interesting in all the through line and all of that is, and I think this happens to so many of us, is that who we show up as in the world becomes our identity. So if we show up at work and we give ourselves a label, that's our identity. I can't tell you the number of moms I've sat with that once their kids leave the house, like that's their identity. And I think there's something that's really profound about what do you do when your identity in these different areas of your life all of a sudden shifts. How do you, there's no manual for that.
No, it's not.
So how do you, and I think about your friend, and I can tell you one of the things that burns on my heart all the time for menopausal women is that we go through this crazy hormonal change that has our brain really thinking different. And then we go through a crazy identity change. And the most common time for women to commit suicide is between 45 and 55. And if you think about that, you're like, that's not a teenager. That's like a mom, a grandma, like a community member. So there's something in that changing of who you think you are.
Yeah.
That I think really catches people. So do we have a formula for like, what do we do in that moment?
Yeah, well, I can speak for myself, like, and maybe, you know, the listeners can relate. Like for me, you know, my whole life, that was my identity. It was sports. Right. It was like, who am I without that, not just even like me putting identity on myself, it's like the world did too. Like when people introduce me, it's like, hey, Trent's my friend Trent that plays football. And so I'm like, oh, I'm valuable because of this title. And it was very hard because I felt like, I even talk about purpose in the book, but I felt like that was my purpose. And I think we make a mistake with that. I think we tie purpose to what I would call placement, you know, their titles and the identities in the world. And I believe that's your placement. I believe purpose isn't something you search for. I believe purpose is who you are. And I had to learn that because when I lost football, I felt like I lost my purpose. And so I had to figure out who Trent Shelton was without the labels. Like at the core, like no followers, so even today, like no author, like no speaker, because these are the things the world puts on you. It's like, who am I at my core? And I don't know if I've figured that out yet. I think I'm still in that journey, but I think I've gotten closer to be like, this is the life that I want to live and lead. If I didn't have any of these outside things, you know, tied to it, even with our worth. And so that's where my worth was at externally. And I think a lot of people go in depression, go into sadness, go into like, man, you talk about the lady that's, you know, 40 years old. It's like this thing, whether it be a parent or it no longer has its power. Maybe my kids are getting older. So what do I do now?
Right.
And your worth is tied into being a parent. Your worth is tied into being a spouse. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if your worth is tied to something outside of you, if that thing doesn't go right or you lose it or it's over, then I feel worthless. And so I had to go on this journey of like understanding that my worth had to be tied to something more permanent. And for me, it's as simple as like, this is who I was created to be. And my worth is tied to Trent Shelton at the core, despite all the identities the world's trying to put on me.
So if you could sum up who Trent Shelton at the core is, who is he?
Just a guy who cares. Just a guy who wants to, as my grandmother would say, leave things better than how I found it. It's something she always told me, like, if you want to be legendary, a legendary person is not a celebrity. It's not a person that, you know, is the thing we look up to. A legendary person is a person that really makes their presence felt and their absence is really felt too. You know, like my mother, my grandmother's like, I miss them every single day because of who they were in my life and what the purpose that they had in this world and what they did. And so for me, it's just like, I'm a guy who cares. I'm a guy every single day that wants to leave that day better than how I found it. And that's something that I could be 100% at.
I really resonate with that part of how we hold on to our identity. And then if that shifts, like you're left with this sort of empty knowing of yourself.
Yeah.
I bet you can resonate with this. One of the things that I've been like really trying to wrap my head around is the last year of my life was the most successful of my entire career. And it would be really easy to be attached to the followers and the likes and the book sales and all of that. And as each one of those numbers grew, the more I landed in my therapist's office because I was like, I have to make sure I do not get attached to that. I do not want to, I even say there's Dr. Mindy and then there's Mindy.
Right.
And like Mindy is who I'm trying to cultivate and get to know, because if you're attached to the external, that's going to move around and you're going to be up one day, you're going to be down one day, and you're just on a roller coaster. So, but you can do, I mean, I've watched so many moms, like when they launch their kids into the world, like the success of a parent is a child leaving your home.
Right. Yeah.
And then you're left with this sort of empty shell.
That's right.
So talk to us a little bit about how we connect back to ourselves, because in the book, you have a couple of things I really resonated with. One is your morning time. I'd love to talk a little bit about that. And the other one is the connection to nature, which was so beautifully said in there about like how if you don't ever go out into nature, why would that be you would feel connection. But I think it was a really powerful point of the book. So talk a little bit about how do we create a routine to connect back to us?
Yeah, you have to, I always tell people you have to find your prescription for your peace. But in my prescription, it's, I laugh because I get texts all the time now since the book came out about my 12 p.m. theory. Like I'm unavailable to the world for the most part before 12 p.m. And people are like texting me, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't like,
now everybody knows.
Yeah, it's like, it's not that serious, but I'm like,
I love it.
I'm usually on Do Not Disturb. And it's not because like, I don't want to interact with the world, but I realized like in me taking care of my world, my family, myself, me filling my cup up, I come into the world a better human being, right? I'm coming more feel my energy's better. My mindset is better. My focus is better. And so, yeah, morning times, you know, it's me really what I would call protecting my peace. And what that looks like is I'm creating the energy that I need. I'm a big believer in doing things that multiply your energy. You know, some people say eat the frog the first thing of the day. Like, that's not my strategy because I'm like, that drains me. But for me, it's like even the smallest things, like what are the big energy things for me that multiplies it? So, you know, the cold plunges, the working out, the meditation. I'm a big sunrise guy. Like the sunrise reminds me that we have another day, a new beginning. And I obsess over sunrises. So I'm out there pretty much every day taking in the sunrise, and that fills my cup up. And when I do these things, I'm more efficient in being consistent with, you know, keeping the promises I make to myself, my habits, my routines. And so that's what it looks like for me. And I'm always in nature. So even this morning, I was in nature. I went out to the Culver City Stairs, and that was
saying downtown LA.
I found it. It was like the view, you know what I mean? But I was able to disconnect. For me, the trails like saved my life, because when I was going through my hardest times of even losing my mother, her going through cancer, even, you know, me dealing with so many things personally, the trails was my safe space. It was a space for me to go to and say, when I walk in these trails, usually the reception is bad, so nothing exists. It was my place to cry. It was my place to talk to God. It was my place to figure out who I am. And it forced me to face myself. I feel like so many people are afraid to be with themselves. So they stay busy, and they use busy as an excuse to not face themselves. They're always going. And so that was the time for me to get to know myself, me get to be honest with myself. What am I struggling with? What am I dealing with? And nature, I believe nature heals. I mean, it's scientifically proven. You know, I feel like nature is literally God's natural medicine for the soul. And there's something about being out in nature that is a beautiful quote that walks the soul back home. And
that was it. That's in the book. I was like, wow. Now we just got back from Wyoming. We just flew in from Wyoming this morning. So I was fresh off my nature path. But say that quote, because that was so good.
A walk in nature walks the soul back home. So that's not my quote. I can't think of the guy's name, slipping my mind, but that's a quote. I was actually in Seattle, and they had it in by the waterfalls, and it just stuck with me because it's true. I just always feel recentered, refocused. I feel lighter. You know, when I'm feeling heavy, I just feel lighter when I'm out in nature.
Yeah. You know, from a actual like body perspective, when we're around like electronics, that's a frequency that is agitating to our bodies. And when we go out into nature, it's literally a frequency. They can measure it. And there's a thing called the Schumann's resonance, which is the frequency of the earth. And when you go out into nature, you're raising your frequency, as opposed to being inside where all the electronics are. You're depleting your literal frequency of your cells.
I believe it 100%. I mean, I feel recharge when I'm out there. And then I love trail running, all the things. I always call it the triple threat. I mean, for your body, walking or trail running, it's great for your mind and also for your energy. And then like the life, like the sounds, you know, it touches all the senses. You hear birds chirping, you hear all this. I always tell people, I don't always love the things in nature. I've had some encounters with like animals and things like that.
Yeah.
My allergies don't always love nature.
You're a city guy. Huh?
Yeah, for sure. But it's just like what it gives to my soul is, I can't find, to me, that's the greatest medicine that I've found for my life. Yeah, and it's changed everything for me.
Agreed. Talk about the people pleasing, because that was also something that was really hit me. And just full transparency, I'm a recovering people pleaser. Like just really realizing that now. And a friend of mine said to me one day, she said, you know, you're so afraid to disappoint other people, but you're not afraid to disappoint yourself.
Yeah. And that's it. You have to be more afraid of letting yourself down than letting everybody else down. It doesn't mean that, you know, I always tell people, like, I have this quote that some people kind of look at me sideways, but I said, I'd rather be viewed as cold-hearted than live broken-hearted. And what I mean by that is like, I'd rather somebody tell me, oh, you changed, or you don't come around no more, or because I'm no longer doing the things that maybe they benefited from. Oh, you're cold-hearted. But I know when I have disrespecting my boundaries, when I continue to please people and let myself down, I end up breaking my own heart. And so being a professional people pleaser, as I call it, is a real thing. And I think we're so afraid, as you said, to let people down that we let ourselves down. And at some point, you're going to feel empty. At some point, you're not going to have nothing to give to the world. And I have a quote that says, the first step to being happy is trying to please everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. And so what I've learned how to do is I've gotten to a point, and it's taking work, and I still have my people pleasing tendencies, but I realize that's mission impossible. I'm like, this is who I am. And I know I'm a kind-hearted person. I know I'm a good-hearted person, but if how I'm living or what I'm doing doesn't please your perception, that's not my problem. And a lot of people will put their perception on you, and they will want you to be who they want you to be. And I mean, I even have it in my career where people will be like, you should talk like this or sound like this. And if I listen to everybody, my life will be all over the place. So I got to listen to what's true to me.
Is there a way to check in with yourself? So here's what's interesting. As I was reading this book on the plane this morning, coming here, I have like 3 things that I was really struggling with if I was going to say yes or no. And then I read parts of your book and I was like, okay, they're a no. Like I'm going to say no to these things now. And there was something in there about how when you say all the yeses, you're now living other people's lives.
Yeah.
You're not living your own. Yeah. So what I then asked myself was like, is there some kind of internal feeling that I could have of like, of putting myself into the future of agreeing to all these things. But then when I get in it, I'm like, this is horrible. Whoever signed me up for this.
Exactly.
And then I'm like, I signed me up for this. So do you have like a gut instinct? Do you have like a formula in your head? Because surely right now you've got so many opportunities.
Yeah.
Is there like a litmus test that you do that say this works for me, this doesn't work for me?
Yeah, it's trial and error. I think saying yes so many times in my past to certain things that even seemed good on the surface, even seemed they were great, but they weren't great for my peace. And so peace is always my guiding force on how I make decisions with my life. If it's going to take away from my peace and I know it, and it's going to stress me out, then it's an easy no for me. And so I like to tell people, like, your principles. What are the principles you have set up in your life that, you know, your principles can make the decision? It sounds like a cop-out, but I tell people all the time, like, I would love to do that, but the way my principles are set up, I can't do it. And so it's not me telling you no, it's my principles. Because if I go against my principles, I know where that's going to lead. It's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to stress. It's going to lead to me gaining weight. It's going to lead to all these things if I continue to say yes. And there's a beautiful quote. It's not mine. It's by a rapper named Nipsey Hussle. He passed away. I don't know if it's his, but he said something that really stuck with me. He said, would you rather be at peace with the world and at war with yourself? Or would you rather be at peace with yourself and at war with the world? Right. And that really hit me because I think a lot of people are choosing to be at war with themselves by making everything and everybody else happy.
Oh, you said something. I have to write this down because I have to speak this because I wrote it down in my notes. You said, it was around relationships. The next thing you know, this is what happens to me. This is exactly what happens to me is I say yes to everybody else's agenda. And the next thing I know is I'm exhausted and my relationships now feel like a war.
Yeah.
So isn't that interesting that we say yes to things that we're now overextended, we're not our best selves, and it's affecting our relationships?
1,000%. Even the immediate relationship that you probably say yes to, because what can happen is you start to resent that person.
Right.
You start to resent and you start to feel like, man, I really want to tell you no, but I'm saying yes and I'm drained. And I'm not going to tell you, but I'm really resenting you because I'm literally drained, but I'm still in this. And then also you don't have energy for the people that need you. So my family is my everything. And so I say a lot of no's. If it's taken away from me, then I can't be the dad or the husband I need to be. And they don't deserve that. And so always have my priorities and principles intact. And I'm pretty good at keeping those things in place. You know what I mean?
Can you share what those principles are? Because I think there's something really key there. Because that's your litmus test, right?
Yeah.
You run it through do you have a list of what these principles are?
Yeah. I mean, one is just family first.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I talk about this in the book. I think you should put yourself first. But when it comes to family first, I'm always making decisions for my family. So right now, like I'm going to leave here and go do an interview. And then I'm making sure that I will be at my son's football game in the morning. And so if I couldn't have made it, I probably wouldn't be out here. And so those are just things that I have non-negotiables set in place. My 12 p.m. theory, that's another principle that I have set in place. So there have been opportunities for me that, whether it be a Zoom, and I'm like, if the opportunity can't wait to after 12, then it must not be really meant for my life, because I believe something that's special like that, it'll be there. And I think what's happened to a lot of people is I see a lot of people, not to kind of change this, but like their pace is being guided by panic of their life. And their pace is being guided by scarcity. So for me, like, I got to take everything. To me, that's a scarcity mindset. And I've been there before and it's literally burnt me out. But now I allow peace to guide my pace. It's just like running a race in life. If you get outside your pace, then you are going to burn out and you're going to be tired. You're not going to do your part. And for me, the race is, not to get deep, but the race is bigger than me, because right now I have the baton in my hand and I'm running my part, but I have to give this baton to my kids. And so if I'm burnt out and not running my race efficiently, guess what they're going to have to do? Play catch up their whole entire life and run harder than they would have to. So I think about that and say, man, I need to be able to say no to a lot of things that go against kind of my peace and my priorities, because I'm in this for the long haul. And I trust myself that another opportunity will come.
Yeah. How hard was that when you first started saying no?
Oh, it was super hard, because I cared how people felt about me.
Right.
I cared that, man, people are going to think I'm a bad person, or man, Trent stuck up. He never does this or that. And that started to bother me, but I had to let go of people's opinions, because end of the day, and I know this might seem like extreme, but I realize that a lot of people you're pleasing that are outside of you, and I'm not saying they don't care about you, because I'm sure some of them do, but a lot of those people won't even be at your funeral service. A lot of people aren't going to be around in your hardest times, and I've realized that. Even when I played football, I think that really helped me become who I am today as far as saying no, because when I was in sports, obviously I was the guy that everybody wanted things from, so I said yes to my friends. I would take care of everything. I would pay for everything, and when I lost that, it was like I couldn't depend on them. It wasn't no reciprocation there. And so I'm like, oh, they only love me just as much as they can use me or benefit from me. And so moving forward, I'm like, I'm not going to feel guilty anymore for respecting my peace and knowing my worth and saying no, because I know the latter,
Yeah. And when I hear those words, I put myself in the shoes of a lot of women. One of the things we do is we feel good about ourselves when we're giving to everybody else. Sure. And so it's scary as shit to think about not getting those, like, oh, you're amazing. Those comments of like, thank you, you're so helpful. I don't know what I would do without you. Like, so many women like live, that's like the juice that gives them energy to get up the next day. So if we take what you just said, which is, okay, all these people you were giving to, when you stopped giving them to them, they weren't around. I think if a lot of women looked at that, that would frighten them. Because they might lose friends, they might lose, family members. So did you, in that change, I would think it was a changing of quality of human you were hanging around.
Absolutely.
Like, what did that look like? Did you lose a bunch of people and then you went to, oh, I only have like now 5 people in my life that love me?
My circle got small. And I think sometimes the best way to add to your life is to subtract from it. I realized that I didn't need a whole bunch of people around to make a big impact. I realized that I needed the right people. And what was crazy, like just being honest, like during that time, I felt like I put the right people on the back burner. And I was hanging around people that, maybe at that time I was going out or they were beneficial to kind of the lifestyle I was living. And I realized, and I asked myself this question, and I teach my kids, everybody, if all you had to offer was friendship, who would still be around?
Oh, that's good.
And that opened my eye up, and it got me around the right people that said, I care about Trent because he's a human, because I love him for who he is. I don't care about what he does. Like, he could do whatever, I'll still be there. And those are the people that I started to put myself around more. So I would tell the person listening to this, ask yourself that question. And a lot of times when it comes to, I know I had this problem with like enabling people, helping versus enabling.
You're right about that. Yeah. Talk about that, because I think, again, a lot of the people listening to this, we're getting self-worth by enabling people.
Yeah.
Because if you need me, I feel good about myself.
That's the thing. We want to feel needed, and I get it. But the thing that, like, I even teach my kids is that, I'm going to help you, but I love you too much to have you depend on me for the rest of your life. I don't want codependency. I know there's a time with kids, and adults, but I don't want you to be so codependent that if something happens to me, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I love you too much to do it for you. I'll teach you. I'll show you. As they say, I'll teach you how to fish, but at some point you have to catch your own, because a lot of times we're saying, oh, I want to help this person. I want to help this person. And really, you're only helping that person depend on you more. And you're not teaching that person to be self-sufficient. You're not teaching that person to be self-reliant, and you're being their ceiling. And that's scary. Like, I don't want to be somebody's ceiling. And I don't want to be you can't grow because you're always dependent on me. And it's hard because I've had to let go of people because I love them. Because I say, you know what? If I keep trying to change you, and that's a big thing too. Like, I had to let go of the idea. I know me being in my space, and I care so much. And I don't know if you struggle with this, but like, I always want to help people. Like, like my friends, my family.
It's my go-to.
And it's hard because especially when, they don't really always receive the help. And it's like, man, I'm telling you, this is how you do it. But what I had to do is I had to let go of the idea of who I wanted that human being to be. And I think that's a problem, because sometimes obviously we want them to be the best version of themselves, and we think we know, but you have to learn how to let go of people so they can grow. And it's scary because maybe they go down a road that you don't want them to go down, but you can't be somebody's ceiling. And so that gave me peace too. Just saying, I would say, like, I let go and let God. Hey, here you go, world. Like, do with this person that you know you need to do. I'm always here to help and support, but I can't sit here and continue to enable you and continue to always be there for you in a way that you're not being there for yourself. So it's tough, but.
Right. Because now you're the best version of them. You're trying to be the best version of them, and it's their lives. Talk a little bit about, there was a statement in the book that I really actually went back and reread the sentence a couple of times, which was that boundaries are a bridge. Boundaries have definitely something I've struggled with. It's along the lines of people pleasing, but it's just knowing how to set a boundary, what is a boundary, and I sure as heck never thought of it as a bridge. And what is it a bridge to?
For sure. So a lot of people struggle with the word boundary. I think we tie a negative connotation to it. It's like boundary is this wall, is this barrier that keeps things out. And I'll be clear, it can be that. Like, if somebody disrespects your boundary over and over, maybe it needs to become a wall, but they build that wall. You don't build that wall. A boundary, reason I call it a bridge, because a boundary should lead you to something better. So if you say that I want more peace in my life, then you should set a boundary that activates that, right? That's why it's a bridge. So even relationships, like even my marriage, we have boundaries that are there, and it strengthens my marriage because, Maria, she has a boundary. Like, she, her morning time, she likes her morning time for herself. Obviously, I like my morning time. That's a boundary. Sometimes I don't want to respect it. I'm like, man, I want to be, but I understand she needs that boundary for her peace to live her best life. And it's the same in friendships. And I think the problem is that, people don't set boundaries for two reasons, worry and guilt. We worry about, what this person's going to say. We worry about, if it's a boundary with family, we worry about what the family's going to say, or we feel guilty that we're leaving people behind, or it's a negative thing. And I think boundaries are beautiful when they're set right. And the only way they're set right, and most people miss this part, is that they're communicated right.
You mentioned that about how communication. Wait, say that, because you said if you imperfect communication leads to. There was some quote you had in there about poor communication actually creates a worse situation.
Yeah, exactly. It does. And it's not fair. Like, communication is oxygen to every relationship that you have, right?
Right.
Without it, it just will die. And the thing that I see, and I've been guilty of this, is like we set these silent boundaries with people and we don't communicate it to them. And we expect people to respect a silent boundary that they don't even know exists.
Yep.
And you're getting in your feelings and you're feeling disrespected or whatever, but you never let this person know, like, hey, this is why I need this boundary. So the first thing I would tell somebody listening is like, go talk to a person and, you know, obviously communicate in a healthy way. Understand who you're communicating with, because I've learned in coaching and things like that, you know, different people receive communication different ways, but you tell them why you're setting this boundary, why you need this boundary. And a person that truly cares about you is probably going to respect it because they want to see the best you.
Right.
But I see a big thing of people. It's like, well, I just expected them to know. They're not mind readers.
Right.
You got to be mature in your communication and communicate.
Yeah. And so let me run a scenario for you, because I know you've had this with your parents, or at least with your mother. Many of the people that listen to this podcast are that sandwich generation, right? Where you've still got your kids,
Right.
and then you're taking care of your parents now.
Yeah.
And so you end up in this real dilemma of like, I'm a mom, I still need to show up for my kids, and I have my aging parents and they need me for X, Y, and Z. This is something I'm going through, is like, do I need to go to every doctor's appointment with them? What do I need to do? And I've asked myself where my responsibility lies as a daughter, as a mother. So in that scenario, how do you set a boundary? Because so many women get into their 50s, and men get into their 50s, and they just got done with parenting, and now they have to take care of their parents.
Right.
And so their whole life dramatically changes because now they're taking care of their parents. But where is there a boundary in that?
Yeah. So I have a thing that I've always taught called, it's called ARC communication. And each one is an acronym. And I'm telling this because I feel like it's important to have the conversation with both parties.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I'm in that situation, I'm gonna have a conversation with my kids and I'm gonna have a conversation with my parents. And I think this can help. I've learned how to do this because I've had times where I just communicated like out of anger, you know, and just like communicate out of frustration, and it never works out. So the A simply stands for appreciation. So anytime I'm about to set a boundary with a person, I'm going to go with appreciation to that person and let them know how I feel about them. Like, I appreciate what you've done, who you are in my life, et cetera, et cetera. And then the R stands for just reassurance. So I'm going to overly reassure them that, you know, I want to help them. I want to be there for them. I care for them. I love them. And then C is just the complaint or concern. And what happens is most times is that when you go through that process, you're in a better place to give communication and they're in a better place to receive it. And so I'm going to do that if I'm in a situation. I'm going to tell my mom or my dad, you know, I want to be there for you as much as I can. Like, let me know what you need me for. But I do want you to understand, like, I have all these responsibilities. And I know you want to see me the best me. I know you want to see me the best father. And I want to be there for you and I will be there for you. But if I'm there all the time, then I'm going to be drained. I'm going to be stressed. You're going to see a lesser version of me. And so I'm going to explain that to them. And then I'm just going to be honest. And this is tough. But at that point, they have a choice to accept it or not accept it. But one thing that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to lose myself because I have so many other responsibilities and I'm not going to feel guilty for it. It's hard. It's easier said than done.
Right.
But then I'm going to talk to my kids and the same thing. Hey, you know, I can't be at every little thing if that's the thing, or I can't, I don't know if you read in the book, but like I had a thing with Tristan where it's called Daddy Shop. And ever since he was a little boy, like I hated like to close Daddy Shop because that was my thing. Like I would get him dressed for school, comb his hair, make his breakfast. Like I loved it. And he got to a point where he was like, I want to say probably 8 years old, 10 years old. And one day I was like, man, I'm being this silly and I got to set this boundary because I need my mornings for me. And I want to teach him how to take care of himself. So I said, hey, Tristan, today's the day, man. Like you handle everything. Pick your own clothes out, brush your hair, cook your own breakfast. He almost burnt down the house. His clothes were terrible. Oh, God. But over time,
we had a boy like that in our household.
But now he's like the best cook ever. Like his pancakes are scrumptious. Like he's fly. But I had to set that boundary. And it was hard. I didn't want to set it, but I knew I had to set it in order to see him grow and let him grow. And also to give me some time that I needed for myself. Because again, if I'm not the best version of me, then all these other things suffer anyway. And so that helps me make those decisions and setting those boundaries.
Yeah. Where does service exist for you in your mind and heart? Because the other piece where I get caught a little bit sometimes is I know I'm actually the happiest version of me when I am spending the energy of my life towards making this world a better place. You said it, like, how do I leave this place a better world? And in my service heart is what I call it. I could really, my boundaries could go away because I want to get this message out to the world. I want to help all these women. It's like I have this heart that just wants to help. And yet I can often do it at the expense of my own physical and mental health. So talk to me a little bit like inside your mind, because I sense from you that you're very service oriented. You're here to make a difference for others. Do you have a conversation, whether it's daily or weekly, where you're like, okay, I really want to serve and give back in this moment, but I'm depleted, or that is going to deplete me? Is that the kind of conversation that is going on in your mind at all times?
Yeah, I have a routine every day that works for me. And once I check off that box, I don't feel guilty anymore.
Okay.
Because, on Facebook, it's 12 million followers, right? And so my inbox, literally, it's thousands and thousands of messages of people wanting help, wanting my time, right? And
do you answer them?
I do. And that's the thing, like, not all of them, but there was a point where I could answer everybody, right? But it was literally depleting me. Like, you're taking on all people's problems and it's draining.
Right.
It's draining. People don't understand that. And then it was a point where if I don't respond, it's like, oh, I knew you didn't care. And they used to break my heart because I'm like,
they fill in the blank.
I wish you knew that I just spent an hour responding to everybody else, but I didn't respond to them. And so in their mind, oh, you're not who you say you are. And it used to bother me so much because I'm like, man, all the things I give to my community and like the support, like I show up on lives and I literally I will do hikes for free and bring people. And I'm like, man. So I had to go down this journey and say, Trent, man, like you just spent an hour of helping people. You're not going to please everybody. You're not going to help everybody. There's always going to be somebody that you miss, somebody who feels a certain type of way. And you have to have a better foundation for your truth and how you feel about yourself. So for me, I'm going to serve every day, at least 45 minutes in my inbox.
Perfect.
And once I do that, I check off that box. No matter what anybody says, I know what I did. So I have those slots in my life where as long as I do X, Y, Z, as I would call living purpose, that I'm satisfied for the day, no matter what somebody says, no matter how somebody feels. And so that's my measuring stick.
So it's like service hours.
There you go.
I think we all could create that, whether you're answering, millions of comments on Facebook or giving to everybody around you. I think you're onto something really interesting there, because you could set like, oh, I'm going to serve and give 2 hours out of the day.
There you go.
And whether it's going to help somebody or do something, and then the rest is going to be these blocked moments for myself.
There you go.
I really like that. And I can tell you from social media, it's so hard because you just want to answer everybody. You want to help everybody, and you just can't. So I admire that you even try for free.
I try. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's definitely tough for sure.
Okay. You had another quote that I really, really loved. You had some really good one-liners. By the way, I am a highlighter when I read. And I pulled out my highlighter, and you can look at the book. I was like, I was highlighting everything. I'm like, ooh, that's good. Ooh, that's good. And then there was too many goods in your book that I had to go over and be like, oh my God. Okay. This was something that this phrase I really loved, which was, visionaries turn down the voices of everyone else. So explain what a visionary is, and then how the heck do you turn down the voice of everyone else in your brain?
Yeah. It takes a lot of practice. And that's why we talked about earlier, the nature for me is a place where I turn down the noise. Because, everybody, not everybody, but some people think that they have the best intentions, right? They think that they know what's right for your life. And sometimes people are right. Sometimes people are way off. I mean, when I first started this, people told me that being a speaker, yeah, right. Like, you don't look like one. You don't talk like one. Like, you never went to, you don't Toastmasters. Like, they
You didn't go to Toastmasters.
Yeah, I didn't do none of this stuff, right?
Toastmasters either.
And so people have their own vision for you. And I understand that, and that's cool. But when you're a visionary is just a person that, you know, has a vision, and whatever that vision may be, and you're locked into that vision. And the best way I illustrate this is like, it's almost like having prescription lenses, right? And your prescription lenses are uniquely designed for you. You go to the eye doctor, the optometrist, I learned how to say that. And you go to the eye doctor and you do all these tests, and they say, hey, this prescription is for you. And I had this moment, I always tell this story. I had this moment with Maria, my wife, and you know, she's been wearing glasses forever. So our eyesight is like, she knows it's horrendous, right? And she knows. And my eyesight isn't always the best neither. But she has these glasses, right? And I put them on. I was like, oh my gosh, you're blind. You can't see nothing. And she like looked at me and like, they're my glasses. You're not supposed to see them.
Oh, so good.
And it hit me. I said, you just gave me something I feel like can shift so many people with vision. I was like, you're right. I'm not going to see clear because this prescription wasn't for me. And it's the same with your God-given vision that people, that's been put on you. Nobody's going to see it. Most people won't see it, maybe a few people, but it's been given to you. And a lot of times what we do is we expect other people to see it. Like when we have an idea, what's the first thing most people do? They run to the people closest to them. They run to their friends and family. Now, your friends or family are visionaries and they're supportive. Yes, go do it. But oftentimes, those people aren't going to understand it.
Yeah.
They're going to see you for who you used to be or who you are to them. So for a lot of people around me, I'm just a football player. So Trent, you have a vision to speak across the world and do all these things. I don't see it. But again, they're now trying to put on my lenses. So of course they're not going to see it. So what I tell people is like, if you take off your glasses, your vision, and let somebody see it, if they can see what you see, because they're a visionary too, great. But if they don't allow that to make you put your glasses that's been given to you in your pocket and you live the rest of your life not clear because you allow somebody who wasn't meant to see your vision, you know, prevent you from living yours. And so I'm very protective over it. I call it like vision protection, and I'm very protective over it. I don't need anybody to see it. Of course, it feels great when people understand it, but sometimes, you know this, like the dream and vision is so big, sometimes you don't even understand it.
Yeah, I always say to people, especially on my team, I always say, I can see it up here. I don't have words for it yet, but I can see the vision that I'm trying to create. And then the more I sort of sit in the vision, the more the words come out. And sometimes you want to try the words out on people, but then you got to be really careful.
That's right.
Because some of them will start to rip it to shreds when you're not haven't fully vetted that vision yet. But I love the eyeglass one, which actually leads me to wonder, have you received a lot of hate on socials at all?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in this for like 15 years. So there's people who don't agree with what I do. You know, it's definitely more love. And that's the thing I had to realize. Like, I have this quote that I tell people, don't let the 10% of hate take your mind off the 90% of love.
Yeah.
Because the hate is loud because you're not used to it. It's something different. And then you literally give your energy to that when there's thousands of people that love what you do. So I made a promise to myself to give my support energy to those that need it. And when people hate, I protect my peace. I don't try to, prove them wrong. I was like, if that's how you feel, you're right. Yeah. And that's great. And it doesn't have to stop my life. I'm just going to keep serving. But one thing is for sure, I'm not going to stop. And so I've learned how to own my power and my peace by not allowing somebody to pull me out of character and take my energy towards that.
Yeah. What do you see? You and I chatted about this when we first sat down. You do a lot of speaking. You've been doing a lot of this podcasting, and you've, out in what I call the trenches with people. What are you seeing about humanity right now? And I think, because this is something for my vision that I spend a lot of time looking at patterns that our culture is going through and looking at where I can be of service within these patterns. Like, I'll give you an example right now. one of the patterns for women specifically is there's just too much information about nutrition out there, and women are getting people in general are getting really lost.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I should go do this. Oh, now I should go do this. So I've been really trying to synthesize all that information and try to bring it into chunk it into simple ways for people to bring everybody into the conversation. So what have you noticed as you've been out into the world? Are people suffering? Are they confused? You talked a little bit about how people are expressing themselves for the first time. You've been doing motivational speaking for 15 years.
Yeah.
Where are people at?
Yeah, I think we're at a place, number one, definitely of information overload.
Yes, agree.
And I'm glad that you're doing that because, I saw one place like, don't drink water. I'm just like, you can find like so many different things.
You're not hydrating
Yeah, it's like, I was
by
like,
drinking water.
I thought I'm supposed to. So like, it's just, you gotta like, that's why I said you gotta trial and error and like, you gotta like at least stick with something for a while and like feel your own body and see what works. But what I'm seeing is, I am seeing a lot more people be vocal about what they're going through. One of the things that always broke my heart is silent battles. People crying out for help but not saying a word.
Yeah.
But now I feel like people are opening up and talking. And it's not a weakness no more. Obviously, I think 2020 really shifted that a lot about mental health. Mental health is no longer a weakness. Like, I'm going to talk about what I'm going through so I can seek help. I'm often seeing too a lost generation of people. What I mean by that, like they're chasing after things that they don't even know what they're chasing after. Chasing after perfection, chasing after, social media, is just a constant chase. And I see a lot of people are tired, burnt out, and jumping from one thing to the next, starting one thing this week and a month later they're trying something else. And then they're giving up on themselves. And then the last thing that I see is just, it comes down to people not feeling like they're enough. And, I started in this space with self-worth. And I went on a tour, my own tour, and I asked this question to all my VIP audience. So it was like hundreds and hundreds of people. Maybe two people actually had an answer. And because everybody complained, like, I just feel like I'm not enough. And so I asked the question, I said, okay, what's your definition of enough? And nobody knew.
Right. We're all chasing something we're trying to fill.
I feel like I'm not enough.
Yeah,
but okay, what's your definition of enough?
Yeah.
And this idea of perfection, it's like you're chasing something that doesn't even exist right now. And so when I say that, like, what's your definition of enough? People are like, I don't know, is enough followers, enough, making how people feel about you? Like, what's enough? And I think it's just mission impossible for a lot of people, and people are suffering because of that.
Yeah. How do we change that? At the end of this, I'll ask you the question I ask everybody, which is, what is health? Because I think that something as simple as that question, most people can't answer. But then they're all, spending money on supplements and gyms and memberships and things trying to get healthy, but they don't know what the definition of health is. And so there's so many scenarios of that in this world where we're chasing something that we think when we get it, we're going to be happy, or we're going to be the person we always thought we were going to be. And yet we don't even have a definition of the thing that we're chasing.
Yeah.
And what we may be chasing is this horrible, yucky feeling inside of me of not enough. And what I just need to do everything I can so I don't feel that.
Yeah.
How do you think we change that as a culture?
Yeah, I think as a culture, I just feel like we have to simplify it, and we have to let people know and value people based on who they are as a human. I think it starts there. Like, I feel like we only value people when they're valuable, as far as like, who you are, or what you do. Like, one of the things that I can't stand is like when somebody treats me different when they find out like who I am,
right,
or what I do.
Right.
I'm like, no, treat me good, or however you want to treat me, based upon the heart of me. And that's why I never tell people what I do half the time, because I'm like, I want you to love me from my heart and judge me based on that. If I'm a terrible person because our interaction, then cool, but I don't want you to treat me different because of some celebrity or some status around my name. And so I think that's a big part too, is like, with people, we got to get back to the foundation of like who we are as a core, and who we are at the core, and making that so simplistic, because you said something that's very powerful. A lot of people they're chasing all these things, and once they get it, they think they're missing something.
Mhm.
Or I'm missing finances. And of course, these things can help your life, but are I'm missing, notoriety, I'm missing status, I'm missing all these things. And I tell people, if you can't be fulfilled with nothing, you'll never be fulfilled with everything, because that will wear off. It's hedonic adaptation, what they call it. It's like, and basically it's a fancy word to say you're going to get used to it.
Mhm.
And once you get used to it, you know what you're still left with? The things you didn't heal from. And so I want people to heal at a foundational level. And I talk about this in the book, Principle 9, is like live in fulfillment.
Mhm.
What does fulfillment mean to you?
Yep.
And for me, it's simply doing what I love with who I love. And that's when I felt the most happiest. And this is a person that NFL career, I was the lowest in my life. So I'm like, okay, well, this is my mecca of life and I'm still low. There's something wrong. Followers, speaking on stages, financial freedom, all these things still didn't give me peace.
Mhm.
It was the time freedom. And the time freedom allowed me to do things that really mattered to me.
Yeah.
And so I think if we simplify life, simplify happiness, I talk about that in the book, where we make happiness so easy to obtain every single day, we have no choice but to be happy.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
most people's list is hard.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to have all these check boxes to be happy. And I'm like, that's mission impossible every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've had a real aha again in the last year, because I had so much success with Fast Like a Girl going out into the world. And what I realized is that there were moments and I was like, I'm living what I have dreamed of my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are still some holes that I'm feeling. There's still some traumas. There's still some patterns of thought that even all this success could not undo. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that I had a sense of like, well, there you go. It's not going to be the next level of more. It's going to be taking those patterns of thought and starting to get to the root cause of them and break them apart and understand them. But I think this year more than ever, I have a real aha of, oh yeah, that thing that you think you want, it's the be careful what you ask for, because you may get it and realize that the pain and suffering that you have now is still there.
Yeah.
When you get the thing that you always dreamed of getting.
And that's when depression can rise even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you got your everything and it's like, wait a minute, I'm still missing something. That's why you see a lot of, athletes, celebrities, take their life, because I just feel like they get to that point of like, okay, if this can't provide my peace and happiness, then there's nothing else.
Right.
Even with football for me, I went through that journey where, I was close to taking my life, because I'm like, if this is the greatest thing in my life and I'm still feeling something that's missing, then what's the point of living anymore?
Right. Yeah.
And so I had to go down to a foundational level and change what I call my measuring stick, just of like happiness and worth, and make it so simplistic. And it helped me, because the next thing, I say this when I speak, and this might not be true for all of you, but maybe for somebody watching this, is like, your next level is not upward, it's inward. And some of us think like our next level is like climbing higher, but a lot of times it's just diving deeper, like you said, to the root issues in your life of like, where did this come from? Why do I feel inadequate? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough? And a lot of times that stems from, childhood things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that you didn't deal with back then. You haven't had time to deal with, and now you get to deal with them. Talk about simplifying happiness, because you said you have a great story in there. And it's, again, there were so many things in there that I'm like, I've thought that. I had that.
Yeah.
And the story was you were on a speaking tour and you were leaving the stage and you saw a homeless guy and you went to go give him money. Tell that story.
Yeah. So it was 2016 in San Francisco, the Bay Area. And to give some kind of context, I was on a 32 city tour, our own tour, which was a lot. Like, I had my own small team and we're doing all the things, booking the venues, and it was great. I mean, each city, 500 to 1,000 people, making everybody else happy. But I had so many things in my life that I didn't deal with. I had employees that I know that they shouldn't be there no more, but I feel responsible for them. I don't want to let them go because I love them. I let them go. I don't want to be this bad person. Personal things in my life, but yet I'm filling everybody else up. And every city I went to, I just felt this gift was becoming more of a burden. And I didn't feel fulfilled in doing it. And I was like, this is scary, because I know this is what I'm called to do, but it's just stressing me out more than anything. Get to San Francisco, and it was a breaking point for me. and none of my team knew because I was smiling for the camera down behind the scenes. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm all right, I'm good,
Yeah.
let's go. And just putting on this performance, and I go out there, make everybody happy, everybody laugh and cry. And after the stage, I told my team, I was like, hey, y'all just go handle everything up front. I'm gonna just go back out here for a moment, get some fresh air. But the fresh air was me crying and me just like pleading, like, man, like this isn't what I thought it would be. And I see a guy, it's an alleyway, like back of a theater. I see a guy, he was a homeless guy walking up, and he saw me and he said, hey, you're the guy that everybody's here to see. I'm on the marquee. He's like, yeah, my name is Trent. And he said, man, like, I feel sorry for you. And it hit me like what? But what he could see was sadness in me. I just got finished crying. I tried to wipe my face, but you could see it.
Right.
And he said, I see you back here. Everybody's happy and laughing in the front. Everybody's like, man, talking about you, but you're here sad. Yeah. And so I reach in my pocket. I try to give him $100 because I didn't want to have that conversation right there. I'm like, I'm not trying to have that conversation. So I don't know you, so he's like, I don't need that. He's like, don't feel sorry for me again. Like, I feel sorry for you. And he said something, and the conversation a little bit longer, but he said, it may look like I have nothing on the outside, but I have something that you don't have on the inside, which is peace. And he said, you look like you have everything, but obviously you're missing everything on the inside. And in that moment, literally, I went to, what's the park out there by the Bay Bridge? Like, has like the circle, it has like rock figure. It's right by the Bay Bridge, but, or the Golden Gate Bridge. But I went over there, and that was when in 2016, I made Protect Your Peace like the mantra of my life. I said, I'm not going to sacrifice my peace for anything anymore because it's not worth it.
Wow.
And that moment changed everything for me.
Wow. What does peace mean to you?
Peace means that not allowing the things outside of me to control my inner self.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. Because peace doesn't, like, you can't control the chaos around your life.
Yeah.
You can't control, it's almost like you can't control the storms, right? But peace says that, yeah, the storm exists, but the storm is also going to pass.
Right.
And so you find hope, learn how to dance in the rain. You be grateful for those storms in your life because you know that it's growing something that no sunny day could have grew. So that's what peace is. It gives me a different perspective towards life, that everything's going to be okay.
Do you think when we are so achievement oriented and we want to accumulate material objects and we are, let's say, buying into the way that this world exists, do you feel like then things become overcomplicated, and the more we move to overcomplication, the less peace we have?
1,000%.
I mean, it's even an ownership of stuff.
1,000%. I was just talking about this with my wife because, we are, we got land and doing all these things and getting stuff and like for finances. And I'm like, man, like this is some stress. Like, like the more things that you have to do, the more stressful it is. And that's why when I've been blessed to be able to go to, like Fiji changed my life. Fiji's a third world country, and I've done 2 events out there, and I'll never forget this because I didn't realize it was a third world country until I went over there. And I was like, man, Fiji, like, kids on the side of the street selling, fruit, and the house are made of tin, but yet they're the happiest people that you will meet. Have you ever been?
No.
Okay, so it's a perfect, like, go. Like, the happiest people you'll meet, and they greet you by saying Bula. And I heard this, but when I get there, I'm like, why are these people so happy? So I end up, a guy named Eli, he was our waiter, and end up like making a good relationship with him. Like, he served at our hotel for a few days, and I'll never forget. I asked him, I said, man, like, I want to ask you this, man, like, how are y'all so happy in, like, your living conditions? And it's just like, it's a third world country. He said, when you learn to appreciate everything you have, you realize you have everything that you need. And that changed everything for me.
Yep.
And so when I saw that, I'm like, oh man, like the more stuff that you have, the more stress, and the simplistic life is often the most peaceful life.
Yeah. And the irony of that, because we're all like constantly giving up the happiness of today for a future that we may or may not ever hit. And when we hit it, if we do hit it, we might be shocked to find out that that wasn't the future that was actually giving us the most happiness. I just had an experience with our 24-year-old daughter. Just moved from California to, we call it Idaho. She moved to a place where Wyoming and Idaho, the borders connect. And she wants to live a more simple life. And so we went to go visit her. And of course, as her mother, like, I was like, well, now tell me what you're doing for work. Like, where are you living? Like all the things that were supposed to be really important. And she kept saying to me, and she moved with her boyfriend. She's like, we want to live a different life than what our friends are living. We want to live a more simple life. We want to live a more balanced life. And on one hand, I really was like, that's amazing. And on the other hand, I'm like, wait, you're 24 years old. Where's grit? Where's persistence? Like all the things I did at 24, you should be doing at 24. And then we just went and visited her for the last week we were there. And I'm like, I get it. I get it. Like you are protecting your peace at 24 and you're standing up for, and they don't want to accumulate a bunch of stuff. They just want to live a happy life every day. And it's really interesting how your stuff can start to get a hold of you. Your job can get a hold of you. All these things that you work so hard to accumulate, they now own you.
Yeah, that I struggle with. That's my battle too, because like I have the side of athlete, like determination, like let's go. And then I have the protect your peace side where it's like, man, I love to be disconnected. And I think like studying just like entertainers, or you see musicians like that will like disappear and like go away. You know, like
where'd they go?
Something there. And you hear a lot of them say, man, almost like I wish I would have never even had all this because so much came with it that literally where I lost myself in, and they go away and disappear and, you know, just go live a happy and peaceful life. And so finding that balance has been like a thing for me. And I feel like I'm doing a better job at finding that. Mm-hmm. But it is a battle because, you know, I got to provide. I got to, you know, all these things. I have an opportunity to impact people. So it's like trying to find that balance.
Yeah. What would you tell your kids about how to build a peaceful life? If you were to give them the formula, what would you tell them?
Yeah, it's so funny because my daughter, I went into her room yesterday. She was like, "Hey, I'm protecting my peace." So like,
I love it. She's using the language. That's
7 years old, she hit me with that. She's like, "Dad, I need some quiet time. I'm protecting my peace." So,
good.
But I would tell them, you know, almost everything I talked about in the book. You know, just having boundaries, not being afraid to say no. You know, not living a life to please, of course, to serve people, but don't feel like your value and your worth is in pleasing people. And just keep it simple. You know, the more that you chase, and I talk about this in the book, I believe in becoming a magnet. And I know in my life, like the things that I chased, you know, we say chase dreams, and I understand the logic, and I say that at times too, but the things that I chased, I never caught. If I caught it, I was exhausted to even enjoy it. Yeah. And so the magnet to me is like, you know, some people call it law of attraction, but for me, it's just like doing the things that are in my control. And it's like things come to my life. Of course, I work hard. I don't just sit and ask and it comes, but I would tell them, like, in your own little world, you know, create your world, that your prescription for your peace that works for you. And don't let anybody make you feel guilty for that prescription.
Amazing. And I will tell you, we're going to have this conversation when Tristan is 25.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's been really interesting to watch my own kids really protect their peace. And I always say, hey, you grew up in a family that thought outside the lines, colored outside the lines. We thought outside the box. And so when they hit those early 20s, then they see all their friends, like they get these great jobs in corporations, or they do all this, and there becomes this like FOMO, you know, like I need to be doing that. I need to be doing that. But I told both my kids, I'm like, the best thing you can do is find something you're so passionate about that you just don't feel like you're working.
There you go.
You're just loving every moment of your life. And that might not be working at a corporation for years and years and years, hoping that you get some good stock options. Like that, there may be a whole different path for you. So but this world, it gives you gold stars for, you know, good grades, and it gives you gold stars for a great job and a big house. And you get that constant reminder from the external world how great you are. But when you protect your peace and step out and say, this is the life I want to live, you may not get that gold star. You have to give it to yourself.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's like swimming upstream. and you're just like going in a different direction than everybody else. Do you find that people around you are, I mean, now that you have the book out, but is everybody sort of starting to change their ways as they're watching you change yours?
I think the people that know me, they've always knew that was kind of who I am,
Right?
In a sense.
Okay, they're like, thank God, you
Yeah,
finally,
yeah,
you finally came out
exactly.
and revealed to the world.
Because that's
Yeah.
like, even as a kid, like my mother would tell you, like I was the kid that like would stay in his room. You know what I mean? I'm still social when I need to be, but I'm the guy that's like, I love my alone time. I love that. But a lot of my friends and people around me, yeah, they're starting to explore. A lot of people in the industry, I mean, even my peers, like they reach out to me and say, man, like, thank you for this book, because, you know, I'm starting to realize like what I'm chasing, like, do I really need to continue to chase this? Or do I have enough? And like, what are the things that really matter to me? And that's a big thing for me too. Like, I don't want to be successful to the world and not successful to mine. You know, that matters to me. I don't want to walk through the door and my family and my kids don't feel the same way. Yeah, we love your dad. And deep down, I'm like, man, like my dad is like, he's never here with us. I never wanted to be like that.
That's awesome.
And so I definitely think that it's opened up some eyes around people around me.
So then that leads me to two questions. One is what's next? And the second question is, when does the book launch stop?
Yeah.
And I just want everybody to know that this is what, 3 months after this book came out?
Yeah, it came out in March. So yeah, about 3 months. What's next is, you know, I always tell, like right now in the season I'm in is to continue to get this message to the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't have a next thing necessarily. Like I want to stay in this moment with protecting your peace. I feel like I have so much work to do with it. And I don't know if it ever stops. You know, I'm going to keep pushing this book, maybe not as hard, but I'm going to keep pushing this message, you know, to the world. I feel like
so needed.
Till I leave here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's something that's a staple of my life for sure.
You mean Hay House hasn't tried to get you to write another book?
Yeah, no, they have. For sure.
I know them, and they're like, you know, great author, great book,
For sure,
great
they
method.
have.
They're like, yes, here
They
you
have.
go.
And I have some ideas on the book for
Yeah.
sure. Like I still have one like thing that I definitely want to put out into the world and talk about. But yeah, they definitely have. So I'm about to record the audiobook for it because I did them separately. So that's going to be a fun process.
Yeah, that's smart. Okay, well then I have to ask you my final question, which is, what is health to you? What's your definition of health? And how do you know when you're healthy?
My definition of health would be having energy, mind, body, and soul in those areas. The triad for me being healthy mentally, spiritually, physically, I mean, even emotionally. And I know I have it when, I mean, not to be pun intended, but when I feel peace in my life.
Gives you energy.
Yeah, when I wake up and I'm feeling vibrant about the day. I'm not dreading the day. And that's what being healthy. And I struggled for a few years, especially after losing my mom and tearing my Achilles the next year. Like I struggled a lot to be healthy. And I feel like I'm still on the journey of getting back, either getting back or I don't like to say getting back, but creating, you know, my best self. And so I'm on that journey right now.
I love that. I love that. I ask this of everybody, and I always think it's so interesting, the answers, and congruency continues to show up. Like people say, well, I know I'm healthy when I'm congruent. And everybody says a little bit different and when I'm congruent with myself. And you know, there's some interesting studies. Like there was one of my guests recently shared a study that they did on smokers. And they found that people who smoked, if they had meaningful relationships in their life, they were less prone to getting lung cancer and some of the challenges that happen with chronic smoking. That's the power of that love and connection. And I think when I hear your definition of health, sometimes I think, God, you know, those of us that are teaching health to the world, we really have it wrong. Because we're thinking, you got to eat this, don't eat this. You got to jump. You said it earlier. I got to jump in some cold plunges and I got to work out this way. And all of that is great. But what if it's as simple as being congruent with yourself?
That's it. 1000%.
What if that is really what health is? And then everything else is just the cherries on top.
That's it.
It's really cool. Wow. I could talk to you forever. So I really appreciate several things about you, but I love your heart and how you just show up. I'm sure people tell you this all the time, but just you're easy to be around. You're so authentically you, and it makes everybody around you want to be their best selves. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
And I appreciate you for having me and what you do. So keep being legendary.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.